John Marston and Aaron Black, two skilled fighters known for their marksmanship and combat abilities, were engaged in a fierce shootout that seemed to have no end. Bullets were flying, explosions were erupting, and shockwaves were being emitted as the two opponents clashed relentlessly. After hours of non-stop fighting, both Marston and Black were heavily injured, bleeding profusely from wounds on their arms and legs. Their bodies were covered in bruises and cuts, and they could barely stand from the pain and exhaustion they were experiencing. Despite their critical condition, the two fighters continued to exchange gunfire and attacks, determined to emerge victorious from the intense battle. However, their strength was waning, and their movements became slower and more sluggish as the fight dragged on. Eventually, the two combatants came to a standstill, both staring at each other with heavy panting and trembling limbs. The battlefield was shrouded in smoke and fog, a testament to the fierce struggle that had taken place. As they weakly made their way towards a portal, they emerged on the other side into a hangar where several other critically injured characters were also present. The likes of Yuri Boyka, IP Man, Michael DeSanta, and various others lay motionless on hospital beds, their bodies wrapped in bandages and ice packs to treat their wounds. Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Joel Miller, and Aiden Pierce, who were slightly less injured, sat behind the beds, watching over their companions with concern. The atmosphere in the hangar was heavy with the moans of the injured and the groans of pain as they struggled to find some comfort in their weakened state. As night fell outside, Owen Grady and Claire from Jurassic World, each with their own injuries, sat beside the sleeping patients, offering what little support they could. Owen's Raptors, Blue and Ripper, also showed their concern for their human friend, providing silent companionship as the group tried to rest and recuperate. In another part of the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon lay on their beds, feeling the effects of their own injuries. As they groaned in pain, their dragons Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly stayed by their side, offering comfort and warmth in the cold, sterile environment. Meanwhile, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin, along with three alien friends, also dealt with their own injuries, the group sharing jokes and camaraderie in the face of adversity. Even the villainous Vilgax found himself subdued by Ben's quick thinking, allowing the injured trio to finally get some much-needed rest. As the night went on, the air in the hangar grew quiet, the injured characters finally succumbing to sleep as they began their journey towards recovery. The alien trio, Owen and Claire, the Raptors, and the dragons all settled down for the night, providing a sense of unity and support in the midst of their pain and suffering. The hangar became a place of healing, where even the fiercest of rivals found solace in each other's company. And as they drifted off to sleep, their dreams were filled with visions of a brighter tomorrow, where they would once again rise to face whatever challenges came their way. Words. 5. John Marston and Aaron Black continued to exchange bullets and attacks, their bodies covered in bleeding wounds and injuries. The intense battle between the two fighters created shockwaves and explosions that rocked the entire battlefield. As they both started to feel the heavy bleeding and injuries taking its toll, they finally decided to stop fighting. The smoke and fog filled the area as they stared at each other, panting heavily. They weakly walked towards a portal that led them to a hangar where other critically injured characters were already resting. Characters like Yuri Boyka, IP Man, Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, Jin Kazama, Kazuya Mishima, Aiden Pierce, and Joel Miller, all with bandaged and wounded body parts, lay motionless on hospital beds. The night fell outside as Owen Grady and Claire sat beside the sleeping characters, their own injuries visible through the bandages and ice packs. Blue, the Velociraptor, approached Owen, seeking comfort, while Ripper, the Indoraptor, comforted her. The rest of the characters groaned in pain as they drifted off to sleep. In another part of the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon were also heavily injured, groaning in pain as their dragons, Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly, rested beside them. In a separate room, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin lay on their beds, their injuries leaving them in intense pain. The alien Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heat Blast comforted the injured trio, with Swampfire's charm making Big Chill blush. Vilgax appeared, but Ben, unable to fight back in his condition, put him to sleep with a glowing stick, telling him to rest. The injured trio finally fell asleep, feeling some relief from the pain as they rested. The dialogue between the characters reflected their pain, struggles, and the bond they shared in their time of need. The thriller genre added an intense atmosphere to the story, keeping the readers on edge as they followed the characters' journey towards recovery. Despite the injuries and battles, there was a sense of unity and camaraderie among the characters as they faced their challenges together. As the night progressed and the characters drifted off to sleep, the hangar filled with a sense of peace and rest. The creative elements in the story, from the diverse characters to the unique setting, added depth and intrigue to the narrative. Overall, the story showcased the resilience and strength of the characters as they overcame their injuries and found solace in each other's company. Words. 420. John Marston and Aaron Black were engaged in a fierce shootout, exchanging bullets and attacks with each other. The intensity of the battle was evident in their bleeding arms and legs, as they continued to clash and emit shockwaves and explosions across the battlefield. After hours of fighting, both fighters were heavily injured and bleeding profusely. Their bodies were covered in bandages and ice packs as they limped towards a portal, emerging in a hangar filled with smoke and fog. Inside, they found other critically injured characters from various universes, all groaning in pain and exhaustion. Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Joel Miller, and Aiden Pierce sat behind the hospital beds, watching over their companions as they drifted off to sleep. Owen, Grady, and Claire, with their own injuries, sat beside them, offering silent support. Blue, the female adult velociraptor, approached Owen, seeking comfort. Owen, in his weakened state, pushed her away, telling her to go to sleep. Ripper, the male Indoraptor, embraced Blue, bringing her solace as they too fell asleep. Across the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon lay on their own hospital beds, groaning in pain from their heavily bandaged injuries. 3 dragons, Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly, kept watch over them, sleeping with their wings entwined. In another room, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin were also heavily injured and bandaged, groaning as they tried to find some relief. The alien trio, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heat Blast, offered their support, with Swampfire's charm making Big Chill blush. Vilgax suddenly appeared, but Ben, using his one untouched arm, silenced him with a glowing stick and put him to sleep. The injured trio finally found some respite as they drifted off to sleep, with the alien trio settling down near them, providing comfort and companionship. As the night wore on, all the injured characters in the hangar found solace in each other's presence, their injuries and pain momentarily forgotten in the warmth of companionship and support. Despite the chaos and violence they had endured, they found peace in the quiet of the night, united in their struggle for healing and recovery. The hangar became a sanctuary of rest and recovery, as the injured characters slept soundly, their bodies slowly mending from the battle scars they had acquired. In the darkness, there was a glimmer of hope, that even in the face of adversity, unity and friendship could prevail. And as the new day dawned, they would rise stronger, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Words. John Marston and Aaron Black were engaged in a fierce shootout, exchanging bullets and attacks. As the battle raged on, the screen suddenly shifted to black, indicating that 9 hours had passed. Both fighters were now completely injured, with bleeding wounds on their arms and legs. They continued to clash, emitting shockwaves and explosions across the battlefield. The two warriors fought relentlessly, suffering heavy injuries and bleeding wounds. The air was thick with smoke, fireworks, and the smell of blood. Despite their weakened state, they refused to back down, their eyes locked in a fierce glare. As they finally stopped fighting, the battlefield was shrouded in smoke and fog. They stared at each other, panting heavily and trembling from the intensity of the battle. Their legs and arms were shaking, the pain evident on their faces. Slowly, they began to walk towards a portal, emerging on the other side in a hangar. Inside the hangar, they found a group of critically injured characters, all wrapped in bandages and ice packs. Characters like Yuri Boyka, IP Man, Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, Jin Kazama, Kazuya Mishima, Aiden Pierce, and Joel Miller were all suffering from bleeding wounds and critical injuries. The room was filled with groans of pain as the injured characters lay motionless on hospital beds. Trevor, Arthur, Joel, and Aiden sat behind the beds, watching over their comrades. The night fell outside, casting a dark shadow over the hangar. Owen, Grady, and Claire, both sporting heavily injured body parts, sat beside the sleeping characters. Blue, the adult velociraptor, approached Owen, seeking comfort. As Owen pushed her away, Ripper, the male Indoraptor, came to Blue's side, offering solace. In another part of the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon lay weakly groaning on their beds. Their dragons, Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly, watched over them, offering silent support. Meanwhile, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin were also critically injured and bandaged. 3 aliens, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heat Blast, approached them, providing comfort and support. As the injured characters settled down for the night, the room was filled with a sense of camaraderie and unity. Despite their injuries, they found solace in each other's presence, knowing that they were not alone in their struggles. The night passed quietly, the injured characters drifting off to sleep, their dreams filled with memories of battle and pain. In the hangar, a sense of peace settled over the room, as the wounded warriors found rest and recovery in each other's company. Words. 428. John Marston found himself in the midst of a fierce shootout with the notorious gunslinger, Aaron Black. The two men exchanged bullets and attacks, each trying to gain the upper hand in the intense battle. The scene was chaotic, with explosions and shockwaves filling the air as the two fighters clashed relentlessly. As the fight raged on, both John and Aaron suffered severe injuries, their bodies covered in blood from the gunshot wounds. Their arms and legs bled profusely, the pain evident on their faces as they continued to exchange blows. Despite their critical injuries, neither man showed any signs of backing down as they fought with all their might. After hours of brutal combat, the two finally came to a standstill, their bodies exhausted and trembling from the intense battle. Gasping for breath, they stared at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. It was a moment of mutual respect for their fierce fighting spirit, despite being on opposite sides of the law. Eventually, they both made their way to a nearby portal, emerging on the other side in a hangar filled with injured and wounded individuals. Characters like Yuri Boyka, IP Man, Michael DeSanta, and Franklin Clinton were among the group, all bearing bandages and ice packs on their swollen and bleeding bodies. As the night fell outside, the wounded characters settled into hospital beds inside the hangar, their groans of pain filling the air. Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Joel Miller, and Aiden Pierce sat vigil by the beds of their comrades, their own injuries still causing them discomfort. Owen, Grady, and Claire, also injured from the battle, sat beside the sleeping characters, offering silent companionship in the night. Owen's loyal velociraptor, Blue, sought comfort from her mate, Ripper, as they settled down for the night. On the other side of the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup, from How to Train Your Dragon, groaned in pain from their own injuries. 3 dragons, Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly, kept watch over their human companions, a display of loyalty and friendship that touched the hearts of all who witnessed it. Meanwhile, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin found themselves in critical condition, their bodies covered in bandages from head to toe. 3 friendly aliens, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heat Blast, offered their support, adding a touch of whimsy to the otherwise grim scene. As the night wore on, the injured characters drifted off to sleep, their bodies finally finding a moment of peace amid the chaos of battle. The alien trio remained by the side of their human friends, a silent guardian presence in the air-conditioned hospital bedroom. In the quiet of the night, with only the sound of labored breathing filling the air, a sense of camaraderie and unity settled over the hangar. Despite their differences, these wounded warriors found solace in the company of each other, their shared experiences forging bonds that transcended words. And as they slept, their dreams were filled with visions of victory and triumph, a reminder of the strength that lay within them even in their darkest moments. For in the heart of battle, true heroes are born, their spirits unyielding in the face of adversity. And in that hangar, surrounded by comrades in arms, they found the courage to continue the fight, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Words. 556. John Marston found himself engaged in an intense shootout with Erron Black, both exchanging bullets and attacks as they clashed on the battlefield. The screen suddenly shifted to black, indicating that 9 hours had passed since the fight began. Both fighters were now heavily injured, bleeding from their arms and legs as they continued to emit shockwaves and explosions with each clash. The entire area was covered in smoke and fog as they finally stopped fighting, heavily panting and staring at each other. They weakly made their way towards a portal, emerging on the other side in a hangar filled with injured characters such as Yuri Boyka, IP Man, Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, Jin Kazama, Kazuya Mishima, Aiden Pierce, and Joel Miller. All of them were heavily bandaged and wounded, groaning in pain as they walked towards their respective hospital beds. The hangar was heavily air-conditioned and smoke-filled, with the doors shut closed. Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Joel Miller, and Aiden Pierce sat behind the beds of the other injured characters, watching over them as they rested and recovered. The night had fallen outside, adding to the somber atmosphere inside the hangar. Owen, Grady, and Claire, with their own injuries, sat beside the sleeping characters. Blue, the female velociraptor, approached Owen, who pushed her away gently, telling her to go back to sleep. The male Indoraptor, Ripper, then came to comfort Blue, and they slept together in a comforting embrace. On the other side of the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon were also heavily injured and groaning in pain on their hospital beds. Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly, their dragons, kept them company as they all drifted off to sleep together. In another room, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin were also critically injured and in pain. 3 aliens, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heat Blast, approached them, offering their support and comfort. Vilgax, their enemy, also appeared, but Ben managed to put him to sleep with his last bit of strength. The injured trio, along with the alien trio, settled down in the hospital bedroom, with Swampfire's charm making Big Chill blush. They all watched over the sleeping Ben, Gwen, and Kevin as they began to rest and recover from their injuries. Dutch van der Linde, in the main hospital bedroom, stirred slightly before settling back down to sleep. The hangar was filled with groans, pain, and the sound of breathing as the injured characters rested and healed in the safety of the hospital beds. As the night passed, the hangar remained filled with the sound of healing and recovery, a space of peace amidst the chaos and pain of battle. Each character had their own struggles and injuries, but they found solace in the companionship and support of each other, as they all fought to survive and heal together. Words. 482. John Marston and Erron Black stood facing each other in the deserted battlefield, guns drawn and ready to fire. The tension in the air was palpable as they exchanged glares, their eyes filled with determination and fierce resolve. Without a word, they both opened fire, bullets flying through the air and hitting their targets with deadly accuracy. The sound of gunfire echoed throughout the battlefield as the 2 skilled fighters dodged and weaved, trying to outmaneuver each other. As the battle raged on, the screen suddenly went black. When it came back on, it read 9 hours later, indicating that a significant amount of time had passed since their initial confrontation. Both John Marston and Erron Black were now completely battered and bruised, their bodies covered in wounds and blood. They continued to clash with each other, emitting shockwaves and explosions that rocked the entire battlefield. Despite their injuries, they fought on, their determination shining through as they refused to back down. Their legs and arms were bleeding heavily, their bodies screaming in agony, but still they pushed forward, each determined to emerge victorious. As the smoke and fog of battle cleared, they both came to a standstill, panting heavily and staring at each other with a mix of exhaustion and respect. Their trembling legs and arms betrayed the toll the battle had taken on them, but still they stood tall, unwilling to show weakness. They both started to walk towards a portal that had suddenly appeared on the battlefield, their movements slow and unsteady. As they emerged on the other side, they found themselves in a hangar filled with other critically injured characters. The hangar was filled with the likes of Yuri Boyka, IP Man, Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, Jin Kazama, Kazuya Mishima, Aiden Pierce, and Joel Miller, all heavily bandaged and wounded from their own battles. They all lay motionless on hospital beds, groaning in pain as they tried to find some semblance of comfort. Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Joel Miller, and Aiden Pierce sat behind the beds, their faces etched with worry and fatigue. Outside, night had fallen, casting a shadow over the hangar. Owen, Grady, and Claire, also heavily injured, sat beside the beds of the sleeping characters, their own injuries evident from the bandages and ice packs that covered their bodies. Blue, the female adult velociraptor from Jurassic World, approached Owen, seeking comfort. Owen gently pushed her away, urging her to go to sleep before he himself drifted off into a deep slumber. In another part of the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon lay on their hospital beds, their bodies covered in bandages and wounds. Their dragons, Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly, stayed close, providing silent support. In a separate room, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin from the Ben 10 series lay on their beds, their bodies broken and battered. 3 aliens, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heat Blast, approached them, offering words of comfort and support. As the injured characters drifted off to sleep, the hangar was filled with a sense of peace and unity. Each character, from different worlds and backgrounds, bound together by their shared struggle and determination to heal. The night passed slowly, but eventually, the hangar fell silent as all the characters slept soundly, their bodies on the long road to recovery. And as the sun rose on a new day, they would rise once more, stronger than before, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Words. 589. John Marston and Aaron Black were engaged in a fierce shootout, exchanging bullets and attacks with each other. The sound of gunshots filled the air as the two fighters continued to clash, emitting shockwaves and explosions across the battlefield. Both men were heavily injured, their arms and legs bleeding profusely from the bullets that had struck them. After hours of intense fighting, the two finally stopped, staring at each other with heavy panting and trembling limbs. They both knew they were critically injured and needed immediate medical attention. With weak and shaky steps, they made their way towards a portal that transported them to a hangar where other critically injured characters were being treated. Inside the hangar, characters like Yuri Boyka, IP Man, Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, Jin Kazama, Kazuya Mishima, Aiden Pierce, and Joel Miller lay on hospital beds, their bodies heavily bandaged and covered in ice packs. They groaned in pain as they tried to rest and recover from their injuries. The night fell outside, casting a dark shadow over the hangar. Owen, Grady, and Claire, also heavily injured, sat beside the sleeping characters, watching over them. Blue, the female adult velociraptor, approached Owen, seeking comfort. Ripper, her mate, joined her, silently comforting her as they both drifted off to sleep. On the other side of the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon were also critically injured, groaning in pain as they tried to rest. Their 3 dragons, Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly, stayed close to them, offering silent support and reassurance. In another room, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin were also heavily injured, their bodies covered in bandages. 3 aliens, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heat Blast, approached them, offering words of encouragement and support. As Vilgax appeared and tried to cause trouble, Ben used his last bit of strength to put him to sleep, insisting on rest and recovery for himself and his friends. As the night progressed, all the injured characters settled into a restless sleep, their bodies still feeling the effects of the intense battles they had endured. The hangar was filled with the sounds of groans and soft murmurs as everyone tried to find some peace and healing in their sleep. Dutch van der Linde, slightly stirring in his sleep, finally settled down, joining the others in their journey towards recovery. The hangar was filled with a sense of unity and camaraderie, as even in their weakest moments, the characters found strength in each other's presence. Words. 424. John Marston had been engaged in a shootout with Aaron Black for what felt like an eternity. The two gunmen were relentless in their attacks, firing off rounds and dodging bullets with expert precision. As the battle raged on, the screen suddenly shifted to black, revealing that 9 hours had passed since the fight began. Both fighters were now covered in blood, their arms and legs exposed to bullets and bleeding heavily. Despite their injuries, they continued to clash with each other, emitting shockwaves and explosions that echoed across the battlefield. The air was thick with smoke, fireworks, and the sound of gunfire as they fought on. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they both stopped. The area was shrouded in smoke and fog, and they could barely stand from the pain. Panting heavily, they stared at each other, their bodies trembling and shaking from the intense battle. Slowly, they began to make their way towards a portal that appeared in front of them. As they emerged on the other side, they found themselves inside a hangar, surrounded by other critically injured characters from various worlds. Yuri Boyka, IP Man, Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, Jin Kazama, Kazuya Mishima, Aiden Pierce, and Joel Miller were all there, their bodies heavily bandaged and covered in ice packs. The room was filled with groans of pain as the injured characters tried to find some comfort in their weakened state. Some sat on chairs beside the hospital beds, while others lay motionless, waiting for rest and recovery. Outside, night had fallen, casting a shadow over the hangar. Owen, Grady, and Claire, their own injuries visible in the form of bandaged legs and eyes, sat beside the sleeping characters, watching over them as they drifted off to sleep. Inside the hangar, Blue, the female adult velociraptor, approached Owen in his weakened state. He gently pushed her away, telling her to go to sleep. She shivered and folded her arms, seeking comfort from Ripper, the male Indoraptor who held her close as they both drifted off into slumber. Across the room, Astrid and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon lay on their own hospital beds, groaning in pain from their heavily bandaged bodies. Their dragons, Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly, huddled close to them, wings draped over each other in a protective embrace. In another room, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin lay on their own beds, their bodies covered in bandages and injuries. 3 aliens, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heatblast, approached them, offering words of comfort and support as they settled in for the night. As the injured characters drifted off to sleep, the air in the hangar was filled with a sense of peace and healing. Despite the battles they had fought and the wounds they had sustained, they found solace in each other's presence, knowing that they were not alone in their struggles. And as Dutch van der Linde stirred slightly in his sleep, the hangar fell silent, a beacon of hope in the darkness of the night. Words. 515. 500. The air in the hospital hangar was heavy with the smell of smoke and the groans of the injured characters. John Marston, still covered in bandages and ice packs, was sitting up in his bed, staring out at the other wounded fighters. He could see the pain etched on their faces as they slept, their bodies still trembling from the intense battle they had just endured. Man, that was one hell of a fight, John muttered to himself, his voice weak from exhaustion. Yeah, no kidding, piped up Franklin Clinton from the bed next to him. I never thought I'd be going up against a gunslinger like Aaron Black. The room fell into a heavy silence, the only sound the soft whirring of the air conditioner. John could feel the weight of his injuries pressing down on him, the dull ache in his bones a reminder of the brutal clash with Aaron Black. Suddenly, a voice cut through the silence. It was Michael DeSanta, his voice strained with pain. I don't know about you guys, but I could really use a drink right about now. The others chuckled weakly, the tension in the room easing slightly. Even in their weakened state, the camaraderie between them was strong. They had all fought side by side, their lives on the line, and now they were bound together by their shared battle scars. As the night dragged on, the characters slowly drifted off to sleep, their breathing soft and even in the darkness. Outside, the moon cast a soft glow over the hangar, bathing the room in a peaceful light. But even in their slumber, the characters' dreams were haunted by the memories of the fierce showdown with Aaron Black. John Marston tossed and turned, reliving the shootout over and over again in his mind. The shockwaves and explosions echoed in his head, the smell of gunpowder filling his nostrils. In another bed, Arthur Morgan stirred restlessly, his injured arm twitching in his sleep. He muttered incomprehensible words under his breath, his brow furrowed in agitation. And in the corner of the room, Aiden Pierce lay perfectly still, his injured body barely moving as he slept. But behind his closed eyelids, a storm raged, memories of the battle with Aaron Black flashing before his eyes in vivid detail. As the night wore on, the characters' dreams intertwined, their subconscious minds forging a bond that transcended their physical injuries. They were warriors, fighters, survivors, and in their shared dreamscape, they found solace in each other's company. At dawn, the characters began to wake, their bodies still sore and bruised from the previous day's ordeal. But as they looked around the hangar, at the familiar faces of their companions, they felt a sense of peace settle over them. We may be battered and bruised, John Marston said, his voice steady and strong, but we're still standing. And that counts for something. The others nodded in silent agreement, a silent understanding passing between them. They were a band of brothers, united by their shared struggle and bound by the unbreakable bonds of friendship. And as they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew that together, they could overcome anything. Their scars may have been physical, but their spirits were unbreakable. And in that moment, as the sun rose over the hangar, they knew that they were truly unstoppable. Words. 566. Pause. John Marston and Aaron Black stood facing each other in the dimly lit alley, guns drawn and ready for a shootout. The tension in the air was palpable as they exchanged glares. Without warning, the first shot rang out, followed by a flurry of bullets as the two fighters engaged in a deadly dance of gunfire. Explosions erupted all around them, sending shockwaves through the air and smoke billowing into the night sky. As the battle raged on, both men sustained heavy injuries, their arms and legs bleeding profusely from the onslaught of bullets. But still, they fought on, their determination driving them forward despite the pain. Hours passed, the gunfire finally ceased, and the two combatants stood facing each other, panting heavily and clutching their wounds. The smoke and fog obscured their vision, but their eyes locked in a silent exchange of defiance. With trembling legs and shaking arms, they slowly made their way towards a portal that appeared before them, both knowing that their battle was far from over. Stepping through the portal, they found themselves in a hangar filled with injured and wounded characters from various universes. Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Joel Miller, and Aiden Pierce sat behind the hospital beds of their fellow fighters, all heavily bandaged and groaning in pain. The room was filled with the sound of heavy breathing and the occasional whimper of agony. Owen, Grady, and Claire sat beside the sleeping injured characters, their own bodies wrapped in bandages and ice packs. Blue, the female velociraptor, approached Owen, seeking comfort, while Ripper, the male Indoraptor, embraced his mate in a silent display of affection. On the other side of the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup lay on their hospital beds, dragons Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly watching over them protectively. The trio of dragons settled down, wings entwined, as their human companions drifted off to sleep. In another room, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin lay on their own hospital beds, their bodies covered in bandages and wounds. 3 aliens, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heatblast, approached them, offering words of comfort and support. As the injured characters settled in for the night, Dutch van der Linde stirred slightly in his sleep, his dreams haunted by the memories of the battle that had brought them all together. The hangar was quiet now, the only sound the soft hum of the air conditioning and the gentle breathing of the wounded warriors. In the darkness, a sense of camaraderie and unity emerged among the injured fighters, a silent understanding that they were all in this together. Despite the pain and suffering, there was a glimmer of hope, a belief that they would overcome their injuries and emerge stronger than before. As the night wore on, the injured characters drifted off to sleep, their bodies finally finding a moment of peace and rest. And in that moment, amidst the chaos and turmoil, a sense of calm descended upon the hangar, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is light to be found. Words. 507. John Marston and Aaron Black continued to exchange bullets and attacks, causing shockwaves and explosions all across the battlefield. They both suffered heavy bleeding and critical injuries, but they refused to back down. The intensity of the fight left them both weak and trembling, their bodies covered in wounds and bandages. As the night fell, the injured characters, including Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, and Aidan Pierce, were brought inside a hangar to rest and recover. The air was filled with smoke, and the sound of groaning and pain filled the room. Owen Grady and Claire sat beside the sleeping characters, their own injuries aching as they tried to find some comfort. Blue, the female velociraptor from Jurassic World, approached Owen tentatively, seeking comfort in her own way. Owen pushed her away gently, urging her to sleep. Ripper, the male Indoraptor, came to her side, offering silent comfort as they both drifted off to sleep. On the other side of the hangar, Astrid and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon lay weakly groaning on their beds, feeling the painful effects of their injuries. The 3 dragons, Toothless, Light Fury, and Stormfly, stayed close, offering silent support as their companions slept. In another room, Ben Tennyson, Gwen Tennyson, and Kevin Levin lay on their own beds, their bodies heavily bandaged and injured. The alien trio, Swampfire, Big Chill, and Heatblast, approached them, offering words of comfort and support. As the night went on, all the injured characters drifted off to sleep, finding solace in the darkness. Dutch van der Linde stirred slightly before settling back into a deep slumber, the events of the day fading into the background as they all sought rest and recovery. The hangar was quiet, the only sound the soft breathing of the injured characters as they slept. The smoke cleared, and a sense of peace settled over the room. Despite the pain and wounds they all carried, there was a sense of unity and camaraderie among them, a shared understanding of the battles they had fought and the battles still ahead. As dawn broke, the characters began to stir, their injuries still present but their resolve stronger than ever. The night had been long and painful, but it had also brought them together in a way they had never experienced before. As they slowly began to wake, a sense of hope filled the hangar, a belief that they would all get through this together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The sun rose, casting a warm glow over the hangar, and the injured characters began to rise from their beds, ready to face whatever came next. They knew the road ahead would be tough, but they also knew they had each other, and that was enough to give them the strength to keep fighting, no matter what obstacles stood in their way. Words. 475.